That was super inspiring. I thought I was super lucky to have her in during
a little bit of that rivalry, go, and it's
a whole new arena. It's like old champions kind of who competed at the.
Oh, pick the other one, please.
The tennis world is buzzing louder than it has in years as a single revelation sends shockwaves through locker rooms, boardrooms, and fan bases across the globe. Because when a legend speaks, history tends to listen. And this time the words attributed to Steffi Graf have ignited a wildfire of speculation, excitement, and expectation surrounding one rising name, Alex Eala, a young talent whose journey now appears to be colliding with destiny in real time. Welcome back, where we break down the stories that matter, cut through the noise, and connect the dots between rumor and reality on the ATP and WTA tours. And if you are new here, this is the moment you want to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay locked in, because what we are unpacking today has the potential to reshape the future of women's tennis in ways few could have predicted. This is not just another endorsement rumor or casual compliment passed through the media cycle. This is about generational power, legacy, and the symbolic passing of a torch from one of the greatest players to ever hold a racket to a young athlete standing at the edge of superstardom. According to multiple circulating reports, Steffi Graf, the Golden Slam champion, the woman who ruled the world rankings for 377 weeks, has allegedly identified Alex Eala as the defining talent of the next generation, describing her as the only and brightest diamond among young players, and more than that, committing to a reported 5-year sponsorship and mentorship arrangement that instantly elevates Eala's standing in the sport. Those words alone carry immense weight, because Graf is not known for exaggeration, public hype, or casual involvement, and when someone so famously private places her name beside a player, the tennis world understands that something serious is unfolding. To grasp why this moment feels so seismic, you have to understand who Steffi Graf is beyond the trophies and statistics, because she is not simply a retired champion lending nostalgia to a headline. She is a benchmark of excellence, discipline, and ruthless consistency, someone who never chased attention, rarely offered opinions, and always let her results speak louder than any microphone. Graf's career was built on precision, mental strength, and an almost intimidating clarity of purpose, and that reputation followed her into retirement, where she carefully guarded her time, her voice, and her influence. This is why reports of her stepping forward to back Alex Eala have sent analysts, fans, and rivals scrambling to reassess the competitive landscape. Alex Eala is no longer being discussed merely as a promising prospect or a regional standout. She is now being framed as a chosen figure, someone marked for greatness by one of the sport's most respected authorities. The implications of that shift are enormous, because perception in professional tennis shapes opportunity, funding, preparation, and psychological advantage long before the first ball is struck. Behind closed doors, this alleged partnership suggests a fusion of raw ambition and historic wisdom, a blending of modern athleticism with classical strategic intelligence that could redefine how Eala approaches her career. Trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Eala has already absorbed the relentless work ethic, resilience, and competitive fire associated with Nadal's philosophy, forging her game through endless drills, physical demands, and mental conditioning that prioritize growth over comfort. Her left-handed forehand, sharp angles, and disciplined movement have become signatures of her style, but until now, her ascent has followed the familiar uphill climb of a young player fighting for recognition in a crowded field. That narrative changes dramatically when the endorsement of a legend enters the equation, because it sends a message to sponsors, tournament directors, broadcasters, and opponents alike that this is not a player to overlook, underestimate, or treat as a developmental project. It is the equivalent of a living legend placing a stamp of approval on potential and declaring it inevitable. Timing, as always in sport, makes this moment even more compelling, because Eala's recent performances suggest a player transitioning from promise to authority, particularly in 2025, a year that has quietly but decisively reshaped her trajectory. Her run at the Southeast Asian Games in Thailand was more than a tournament victory. It was a psychological test conducted under intense national scrutiny, where expectation weighed as heavily as the humid air surrounding the courts. Representing a nation where sporting heroes are revered with near religious devotion, Eala carried the hopes of a growing tennis audience eager for a symbol, and she responded not with hesitation, but with dominance. In the final, facing home favorite Maninkaya Sawanki, backed by a partisan crowd and familiar conditions, Eala delivered a ruthless performance, dismantling her opponent 6-1, 6-2, turning a gold medal match into a statement of control and composure. That victory did more than place a medal around her neck. It proved she could thrive under pressure that crushes many seasoned professionals, and it reinforced the idea that her ceiling extends far beyond regional success. What followed next underscored her evolving mindset, because rather than pausing to celebrate, she moved immediately into higher-level competition, traveling to Macau for the MGM Macau Tennis Masters, an event that placed her alongside established ATP names and exposed her to environments where expectation is replaced by scrutiny. Sharing courts and practice spaces with elite players like Jack Draper is not just about match play, it is about assimilation into a different tier of professionalism, where routines, recovery, and preparation are elevated to an art form. Looking ahead, her confirmation for the Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open further signals intent, because these are not symbolic appearances, they are strategic steps towards sustained presence on the global stage. All of this context explains why the reported involvement of Steffi Graf resonates so deeply at this precise moment, because Eala stands at one of the most difficult thresholds in tennis, the transition from top 50 ambition to top 10 reality. That climb is unforgiving, often referred to by players as the death zone of the rankings, where talent alone is no longer enough, margins shrink, and mental resilience becomes the defining currency of survival. This is where mentorship can change careers, and where Graf's influence, if real, could prove transformative. Graf competed in an era defined by fierce rivalries, relentless media pressure, and personal adversity, standing toe-to-toe with icons like Martina Navratilova and Monica Seles, and emerging not just victorious, but composed. Her experience navigating those battles is invaluable, particularly for a young player preparing to face the modern equivalents of that intensity. Strategically, the potential evolution of Eala's game under Graf's guidance is tantalizing, because Graf's legendary slice backhand, her ability to disrupt rhythm, and her tactical patience contrast sharply with the power-driven baseline dominance that defines much of today's women's game. Eala's natural left-handed advantage already presents opponents with unfamiliar angles and spins, and if combined with greater variety, touch, and point construction, she could become a puzzle many power hitters are ill-equipped to solve. The prospect of that tactical blend has not gone unnoticed, and it raises questions about how current stars will adapt if a more versatile, mentally fortified Eala begins to challenge them regularly. Yet beyond technique and results, the symbolism of this story carries equal significance, because it introduces an element of narrative drama that professional tennis thrives on. If Eala is perceived as Graf's chosen player, every match she plays acquires added tension, as opponents seek not just victory, but validation, an opportunity to challenge the judgment of a legend. Rivalries are born not only from rankings, but from stories, and this one has all the ingredients to captivate fans across continents. Commercially, the impact could be just as profound, because Eala represents a massive, under-tapped market in Southeast Asia, a region hungry for tennis heroes and global representation. With Graf's alleged endorsement amplifying her visibility, sponsorship interest is expected to surge, opening doors to partnerships that extend beyond equipment and apparel into lifestyle, luxury, and global branding. The description of Eala as a diamond is more than poetic flair, it is a strategic framing of value, durability, and brilliance that aligns perfectly with modern sports marketing. As speculation continues to swirl around the reported 5-year duration of this partnership, the long-term implications become even more intriguing, because 5 years in tennis encompasses an entire developmental cycle, carrying a player from youth to prime. By the end of such a span, Eala would be 25, an age historically associated with peak performance, suggesting that this is not a fleeting association, but a deliberate investment in legacy. Whether this mentorship unfolds quietly behind the scenes or becomes a visible presence in player boxes and training blocks remains to be seen, but the mere possibility has already shifted expectations. For now, the tennis world waits, analyzes, and debates, aware that moments like this, whether confirmed or rumored, have a way of becoming turning points in retrospect, chapters that later generations look back on and identify as the beginning of something extraordinary. As the rumor continues to ripple outward, the conversation naturally expands beyond tactics and trophies into the emotional, cultural, and psychological layers that make this story resonate far beyond the baseline. Because when a young player is anointed by a legend, the pressure multiplies just as quickly as the opportunity. Being labeled the brightest diamond of a generation is both a gift and a burden, and history has shown that not every prodigy survives the weight of expectation that follows such praise. Yet what separates Alex Eala from many hyped talents of the past is the grounding influence that appears to shape her mindset, a calm discipline forged through years of structured training, family support, and a visible commitment to process rather than headlines. Observers who follow her interviews closely notice a consistent theme: patience, repetition, and improvement, words that echo the philosophy Steffi Graf herself embodied throughout her career. Graf was never seduced by noise, she never chased stardom for its own sake, and she never built her legacy on spectacle alone, instead choosing consistency, preparation, and relentless execution. That alignment of values may be the most important element of this reported partnership, because skill can be taught, but mentality is far harder to transfer. Fans often underestimate how much the mental side determines success at the highest level, particularly in a sport as isolating as tennis, where every mistake is exposed and every weakness targeted. Graf thrived in that environment, carrying the weight of German expectation, intense media scrutiny, and personal turmoil without allowing it to fracture her focus. If she is indeed guiding Eala, even indirectly, the lessons drawn from that experience could become the foundation of Eala's rise. The locker room implications of this narrative are equally fascinating, because professional tennis is as much about perception as performance. Once a player is perceived as special, opponents prepare differently, coaches adjust scouting reports, and matches take on psychological complexity before the first serve. If Eala steps onto court with the unspoken label of Graf's protégé, every rally becomes a referendum on that belief. Rivals will want to test her, expose her, and prove that legends can be wrong, while at the same time respecting her game enough to approach with caution. That tension creates an environment where growth accelerates, because survival requires adaptation, resilience, and constant evolution. For Eala, this could act as a catalyst, pushing her to refine aspects of her game that might otherwise develop more slowly. Tactically, the possibilities remain one of the most exciting dimensions of this story, because Graf's influence represents a philosophical counterbalance to the current power-dominant era. Women's tennis today often rewards raw pace and baseline aggression, encouraging players to hit through opponents rather than around them. While effective, this approach can become predictable, particularly when margins tighten against elite defenders. Graf's genius lay in her ability to control points through variation, slicing, height changes, and court positioning, forcing opponents to think, hesitate, and adjust on every shot. Eala already possesses natural variety through her left-handed spin and angles, and the integration of greater tactical nuance could transform her into a uniquely disruptive presence on tour. Imagine a player capable of absorbing power, redirecting pace, and constructing points with patience while still unleashing offense when the opening appears. That hybrid model has historically produced champions. The mental chess match that accompanies such a style often frustrates opponents accustomed to rhythm-based exchanges, leading to errors born from impatience rather than technical deficiency. This is where Graf's mentorship, if real, could quietly reshape Eala's identity as a competitor. Beyond the court, the commercial and cultural impact of this association continues to expand, particularly when viewed through the lens of global fandom. The Philippines has long celebrated its sporting heroes with unparalleled passion, transforming athletes into national symbols whose victories resonate far beyond sport. Manny Pacquiao's rise demonstrated how a single figure can unite a diaspora, galvanize national pride, and capture global attention simultaneously. Eala carries the potential to ignite a similar phenomenon within tennis, a sport still emerging within the Philippine mainstream but rapidly gaining traction among younger audiences. With Graf's name attached, even informally, that momentum accelerates, attracting sponsors eager to connect with a market defined by loyalty, engagement, and emotional investment. This is not just about endorsement deals, it is about infrastructure, academies, grassroots development, and the long-term growth of tennis culture across Southeast Asia. The WTA has spent years seeking deeper engagement within Asian markets, and figures like Li Na proved how transformative a single champion can be. Eala's rise, amplified by a European legend's endorsement, could represent the next chapter of that expansion, blending local pride with global legitimacy. Yet with opportunity comes scrutiny, and critics have raised valid concerns about whether such early elevation risks placing undue pressure on a 20-year-old athlete still navigating her development. Tennis history is littered with examples of players burdened by expectation before they were emotionally prepared to carry it. The difference in this case may lie in Graf's own aversion to spectacle, because she is unlikely to demand public validation or instant results. If involved, her approach would almost certainly emphasize patience, sustainability, and long-term growth rather than short-term headlines. That distinction matters, because mentorship that prioritizes development over dominance tends to nurture resilience rather than anxiety. Graf stepped away from the spotlight at the height of her fame, choosing privacy and balance over prolonged exposure, a decision that reflects emotional intelligence rarely discussed in sports narratives. If those values are passed on, they could protect Eala from the most corrosive effects of fame. The mystery surrounding the reported diamond quote only deepens the intrigue, because its origin remains unknown, adding an almost mythic quality to the story. Whether spoken in a private meeting, shared during a casual conversation, or relayed through intermediaries, the phrase has taken on symbolic power, framing Eala as a rare asset rather than a fleeting trend. Language matters in sport, and metaphors often shape perception more strongly than statistics. A diamond suggests rarity, resilience under pressure, and enduring value, qualities any champion must possess. As the 2026 season approaches, every appearance Eala makes will be examined for evidence of transformation, subtle changes in shot selection, court positioning, or emotional control interpreted as signs of Graf's influence. Exhibition events that once felt peripheral now carry narrative significance, because observers search for clues, patterns, and evolution. Even the absence of visible confirmation becomes part of the story, fueling speculation and anticipation in equal measure. Financially, the implications of a 5-year sponsorship, if confirmed, could be decisive for Eala's competitive stability. Professional tennis demands constant investment in travel, coaching, physiotherapy, and recovery, and financial strain often undermines development more than lack of talent. Security in this area would allow Eala to focus exclusively on performance, eliminating logistical anxiety and leveling the playing field against players supported by wealthy federations. Freedom from financial pressure is an underrated advantage, one that enables smarter scheduling, better recovery, and longer careers. It also permits strategic risk-taking, entering tournaments for development rather than immediate reward, a luxury many young players cannot afford. In the broader context of women's tennis, this potential partnership arrives at a moment of transition. The tour features established champions dominating with power and consistency, alongside emerging talents eager to disrupt the hierarchy. What it lacks, some argue, is stylistic diversity and geographic expansion, elements that keep the sport unpredictable and globally relevant. Eala's emergence addresses both, offering a playing style shaped by varied influences and a cultural narrative rooted in a region hungry for representation. Graf's involvement, symbolic or practical, reinforces the legitimacy of that emergence, bridging eras and continents in a way few endorsements ever do. Skepticism remains healthy, particularly given the absence of official confirmation, and fans must acknowledge the possibility that rumors exaggerate or misinterpret reality. Yet even without formal announcements, the conversation itself has altered Eala's standing, demonstrating how belief can shape opportunity. In professional sport, belief often precedes achievement, creating momentum that players either harness or resist. For Eala, the challenge will be to internalize confidence without absorbing entitlement, to embrace expectation without allowing it to dictate identity. Graf's career offers a blueprint for that balance, proving that greatness can coexist with humility and restraint. As attention intensifies, the coming months will test Eala's adaptability, resilience, and consistency, qualities that determine whether promise matures into dominance. Observers will monitor rankings, match results, and behavioral cues, searching for confirmation that the diamond is indeed forming under pressure. Whether this story becomes a defining partnership or a fascinating footnote, its impact on perception, motivation, and narrative is undeniable. Tennis thrives on moments like these, where possibility intersects with legacy, and where the future feels tangible rather than theoretical. As speculation continues, one truth remains clear: Alex Eala stands at a pivotal crossroads, supported by performance, ambition, and now the whispered endorsement of greatness. The next chapter will be written not by rumors, but by results, and the court, as always, will deliver the final verdict. As the narrative reaches its most critical phase, the focus inevitably shifts from speculation to consequence, because in professional tennis, stories only endure if they are validated by performance, and every whispered endorsement eventually demands proof under lights, pressure, and unforgiving scorelines. Alex Eala now finds herself positioned at the intersection of expectation and opportunity, a space where careers are either accelerated into greatness or derailed by the weight of belief. If the reported connection with Steffi Graf materializes into visible mentorship, the next 12 to 18 months could define not only Eala's trajectory, but also how future generations interpret the role of legends in shaping modern careers. The 2026 season looms as a proving ground, beginning with the Australian Open, a tournament notorious for exposing mental fragility as much as physical readiness. Melbourne's heat, relentless schedule, and intense media presence create a crucible where preparation is tested ruthlessly. Should Eala arrive there with even subtle signs of Graf's involvement, a training sighting, a courtside appearance, or a quiet confirmation from her camp, the narrative will instantly dominate coverage. Headlines will frame her matches not merely as contests, but as case studies in legacy transfer, and every result will be amplified accordingly. Yet even without overt confirmation, the psychological effect of being perceived as a player of special interest will persist, shaping draw dynamics, broadcast focus, and opponent mindset. Play season offers a different lens through which to evaluate potential transformation, because it rewards patience, construction, and adaptability, qualities synonymous with Graf's success at Roland Garros. Eala's foundation from the Rafa Nadal Academy already equips her with clay court literacy, but the addition of Graf's strategic nuance could elevate her from competent to dangerous on the surface. Deep runs in Madrid or Rome would signal tangible progress, not only in shot tolerance, but in tactical maturity, particularly if victories come through variation rather than sheer force. Roland Garros itself would serve as a litmus test, because success there requires emotional endurance, the ability to reset after long rallies, and the humility to accept incremental gains. Graf mastered those demands across 6 French Open titles, and her perspective on navigating that environment could be invaluable, even if delivered indirectly. Graf's season introduces another dimension entirely, because it exposes technical flaws and rewards instinctive adaptation. Wimbledon, the stage where Graf built her most iconic legacy, represents the ultimate benchmark for all-court intelligence. A composed performance by Eala on grass, regardless of round reached, would reinforce the idea that her game is expanding beyond surface specialization. The symbolism of that evolution would not be lost on observers, because versatility often distinguishes contenders from champions. Beyond tournament results, the subtler metrics of progress will matter just as much: body language under pressure, decision-making on big points, recovery after losses, and consistency across consecutive weeks. These are the invisible markers of mentorship influence, often overlooked by casual fans but scrutinized by coaches and analysts. Graf's greatest strength was not any single shot, but her ability to impose clarity on chaos, to simplify complex moments into executable plans. If Eala begins to display that same composure, particularly against higher-ranked opponents, it will validate much of the speculation surrounding this partnership. The psychological dimension extends to the tour at large, because opponents do not exist in a vacuum. Once belief spreads that a player is destined for greatness, matches against her carry added emotional stakes, and those stakes can alter behavior. Players may press harder, attempt riskier shots, or abandon patterns that would normally serve them well, creating opportunities for a composed competitor to capitalize. This phenomenon has shaped the careers of many champions, and Eala's challenge will be to remain centered while others project expectation onto her presence. Off-court, the business ramifications continue to unfold, because modern tennis careers are built as much on brand management as on rankings. With increased visibility comes a flood of opportunities, endorsements, appearances, and commitments that can distract even the most disciplined athlete. Graf's own post-career restraint offers a valuable lesson here, demonstrating that selective engagement preserves focus and longevity. If Eala and her team adopt a similar philosophy, prioritizing alignment over volume, her brand could mature organically alongside her results. This approach resonates particularly well with the Filipino diaspora, a global community that values authenticity and representation over spectacle. Their support is passionate but discerning, and players who honor that connection often benefit from unwavering loyalty during both triumph and adversity. In a broader sense, this story reflects a shift in how tennis legacy is transmitted across generations. Historically, legends either distanced themselves from the next wave or became coaches in formal, highly visible roles. The possibility of a quieter values-based mentorship model suggests an alternative path, one where influence is exerted through philosophy rather than instruction, and where development unfolds away from constant scrutiny. Graf's life after tennis embodies that approach, balancing privacy with purposeful involvement, and if applied here, it could redefine expectations for retired champions seeking to contribute without overshadowing. Critics will continue to question the wisdom of attaching legendary names to young careers, and those concerns are not unfounded. The sport has witnessed moments where hype eclipsed readiness, leading to burnout or stagnation. The difference lies in agency, because the most successful mentorships empower players to own their journeys rather than conform to inherited identities. Eala's demeanor suggests an awareness of that balance, a willingness to learn without surrendering autonomy. Her interviews consistently emphasize growth, resilience, and gratitude, signaling emotional intelligence that bodes well for navigating elevated attention. Ultimately, the question is not whether Steffi Graf's reported endorsement guarantees success, but whether it provides tools, perspective, and belief that enhance Eala's capacity to realize her potential. Tennis remains brutally meritocratic, and no association can substitute for execution when margins narrow and pressure peaks. Yet history shows that the right guidance at the right moment can accelerate development, sharpen focus, and instill confidence that endures through inevitable setbacks. As this story continues to evolve, fans and analysts alike will watch for confirmation, patterns, and progress, aware that transformation in tennis rarely announces itself loudly, but reveals itself gradually through consistency. The coming seasons will clarify whether this rumored alliance becomes a defining chapter or a symbolic footnote, but its influence on conversation, expectation, and imagination is already undeniable. Alex Eala stands poised at the threshold of a new era, carrying the hopes of a nation, the curiosity of a sport, and the whispered approval of a legend. Whether she emerges as a champion will depend not on narrative alone, but on her ability to translate belief into performance, pressure into precision, and opportunity into achievement. One thing is certain, the tennis world will be watching every step, every swing, and every moment of response, because when history appears ready to repeat itself in a new form, attention becomes inevitable. This is not merely a story about endorsement or mentorship, it is about possibility, the kind that defines generations and reshapes landscapes. As the season unfolds, the court will provide answers, and Champions Tennis will remain here to document each chapter, because moments like these remind us why the sport continues to captivate, challenge, and inspire. End of Part 3.